even like this, I was like physically making these motions and just asking myself, like, what am I doing? Why am I here? And it was like in that moment, you knew it had to change. Like it was just like
Mm,
such a rock bottom, awful feeling of not being in alignment, not being in alignment with
mm.
your heart, your soul, your mission, whatever you want to call it. And I really committed in that moment, not feeling very good, but really committed in that moment to making some massive changes. And I had no idea at that time what that looked like, but I just knew I was going to do it.
All right, welcome everybody to our newest episode. My name is Stacey Uhrig. I'm your host, and my guest today is Lisa Vanhara. And I've known Lisa for a long time. We've been acquaintances for quite a while. We live in the same town, and I've always known Lisa as a realtor, her and her husband, as a realtor team in our town. And over the years, I've kind of watched Lisa evolve, and I've watched her evolve by way of Facebook, social media, listening. She even dropped a beautiful book off at my house one time.
That's right.
And I was just like, wow, where is she going with this? Like, I felt like I was watching through this window, this evolution of Lisa. And then I found out that we were connected to other people who were in my spiritual healing community. And so I reached out and I wanted to learn a little bit more about why she made this pivot, what this pivot is. And I was really inspired by her story. So I asked her to be a guest on the podcast to see if she could be an inspiration to you guys as well. So I'm going to just give it to Lisa and have her introduce herself and share with you all who she is and what she does. So welcome, Lisa.
Thanks, Stacey. That was a nice intro, and I forgot about the book, so I love
I
that.
know.
So I'm Lisa Vanhara, and yes, I have been in the real estate business now for about 14 years. And I've loved real estate. It's been a great experience growing and evolving myself and learning business and learning how to connect and communicate with people and really help people get to that next phase of life. And then, things in 2020 came about, right? Like
Mm.
everything kind of shifted. But even before that, before COVID came around, I really started getting serious about business in real estate and about personal development. So probably 2017, 2018 is when I started taking some big steps towards just exploring that more. Like, what did that mean? Um, how could that help my business grow, myself as a person grow, and all that stuff? So that's kind of where it started. And then 2020 is when some really big, massive shifts came in.
May I ask you a question? What was it in that 2017, 2018 time frame that had you starting to seek and explore?
Yeah, well, some of that I definitely owe to the company I work with, Keller Williams, as the realty company I work at. And they're great about having conferences and different things like that. So I had attended my first, like, I think it was 2017, like massive, real estate convention. And when I went to that, it was like just kind of like a click then of like, wow, there's so much I don't know. There's so much I don't know. And I really got excited to learn and kind of dive back into that of just soaking up information and knowledge where I
And
could
was
or where I
that
felt
real
called to.
estate specific or was that you specific?
That was more, it was both. And a lot of it, though, was on personal growth and development and mindset, a lot about mindset at that time.
Hmm. And then where did you
And
go from there? What happened? You were sharing with us that 2020 was kind of where everything took a turn.
yeah, 2020, of course, impacted everybody in so many different ways. And real estate was, starting off the year like, oh my gosh, we may not sell anything, right? It was a total roller coaster that year because everything shut down, everything, life as we know it changed. So it was it summertime then when things kind of opened up a little bit more? And then people spending all their time in their homes for so long and way more than they typically did were thinking they needed to get different spaces. They wanted to move closer to family, whatever it may be. So it was a great year as far as business and as far as uh, growing the real estate business and helping a lot of people. And it all happened so fast in such a condensed amount of time that I personally hit like major burnout. I hit major burnout just not knowing how to manage and take care of all those pieces of the business and still giving a high level of service to our clients.
And what did burnout look like for you?
Burnout, is coming. It's just like whether or not you're listening to it.
Mm.
And I chose not to listen to it. And I was like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep driving forward. And I wasn't listening. There was a moment or two where maybe I took a break and was on the beach relaxing. But for the most part, I really needed to slow down and kind of take inventory on my schedule and what was going on in my life. But I didn't do that. And so the kind of major turning point was October of 2020. I really hit a point that month where I decided I needed to actually stop and go away for a weekend. And by this point, I was just stressed. I was like even physically shaking sometimes. I was just
Mm.
completely not present with myself, not connected. So I went away for a weekend to take it's pranic healing, if people have heard of that or not, but it was a webinar on that. And I left my house so I could have some time to myself to do this webinar.
And what is pranic healing before we get into the next piece?
Yeah, it's different type of energy work and meditation and incorporated in that. And just really, everybody knows chakras, of course. So it's some work around that, clearing your chakras, clearing your energy, and different things like that. So I was a little familiar with it already, but not to that level.
And so before we go any further, you were talking before about, when you have burnout, you weren't listening. It was being presented to you, but you weren't listening. What were some of the whispers that you were ignoring that were basically whispering in your ear, this is burnout, you need to slow down, you need to slow down?
That's a great question. There's so many whispers I think that were happening at the time. So I'm picking out the strongest ones were um, possibly looking to cope with it. So if you're looking to cope with the stress or the burnout, you're turning to something else externally. So I was turning to, I had to take naps, even though it's like I didn't have any time. I would still take a power nap throughout the day. Otherwise, I just couldn't function. And I would turn to alcohol probably too much during that time because I just needed to numb all that feeling of chaos. Like if you're feeling an element of chaos in your body and your life, you probably just need to slow down a little bit.
So here's my next question before we get into what happened at that webinar. Why weren't you listening to it?
That's also a great question. There's a few different answers. One, because I didn't think it was possible, right?
Mm.
That was a huge thing in my mindset of I didn't think it was possible and that it would eventually slow down. It would eventually slow down, but also you got to keep going while the fire's hot or, kind of stuff like that, right? So it's like you got to keep going while everything, all this business is coming in and you're helping people get into these homes.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that, and also just, a high level of slight perfectionism in there, of like
Yeah.
really wanting to um, take care of my clients and take care of our clients. But it was uh, also a level of ego in there of, how much I needed to do this for me and
That's
say I
kind
could
of what
do
I
this.
was getting at because, when I work with people, I did a podcast the other day for a gal that only does podcasts for women who are on burnout. Like, you know, These are the people that listen to her, and she's kind of a burnout coach for working moms. And we talked a lot about, people, you said the word, it wasn't available to me, or I didn't believe, that slowing down was an option. And,
Yes.
what I've learned working with my clients is uh, coping mechanisms, maladaptive coping mechanisms show up in a lot of different ways. And whatever we've learned in our young time on this earth, people know I always go back to childhood, is whether the person didn't feel seen or heard or significant or important at some point in their life, or safe or connected,
Hmm.
they will come up with coping strategies, many of which seem very appropriate.
Hmm.
And workaholicism seems like a very appropriate response, right? It's very socially acceptable. Perfectionism, very socially acceptable. Not setting boundaries and putting other people's needs ahead of ours, and not taking care of ourselves. Socially responsible, being incredibly independent. These are
Hmm.
actually all trauma responses. They're maladaptive coping mechanisms to something that the person believes about themselves, right?
Yes.
And one thing I've learned is that some people walk with this core belief that if it's not stressful, it's not successful,
Yeah, that's very true. It is
right?
so tied to that and the belief of whatever you're holding on to and whether you're aware of it or not, right?
And the awareness is key. So, fast forwarding, you're starting to become more aware, right?
Yeah.
And you decide to tap into this pranic healing webinar, and you say to your family, I'm out, I'm going away for 2 nights or a night, and I just need to decompress, and I'm going to do this for myself. And what happens?
Yeah, so I go away for 2 nights, and I take the first day of the webinar. I really plug in, enjoy it very much. But that night I go eat by myself, and I end up drinking way too much, and
By
way too
yourself.
much by myself. Didn't know anybody there, and then I wake up the next morning with probably one of the worst hangovers I've ever had in my life, and that coming around to it. And then once I was awake and all that, I remember standing in my hotel room and I'm just like, what the fuck am I
Yeah.
doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, even like this, I was like physically making these motions and just asking myself, like, what am I doing? Why am I here? And it was like in that moment, you knew it had to change. Like it was just like
Mm,
such a rock bottom, awful feeling of not being in alignment, not being in alignment with
mm.
your heart, your soul, your mission, whatever you want to call it. And I really committed in that moment, not feeling very good, but really committed in that moment to making some massive changes. And I had no idea at that time what that looked like, but I just knew I was going to do it.
And one question I have for you is, what was your emotion at that time? Was there shame? Was there fear? What were you experiencing emotion wise in that time?
Oh, that's so good. Because absolutely, I was feeling so much shame, so much confusion, so much anger, a lot of anger, and just a lot of, you know, it's deeper than confusion. I'm looking for the word for that, but just
Mm,
um, admitting I don't know and I don't understand and asking for help. So, whether that's the universe, God, whatever you believe, just asking for help outside of yourself.
would you call that surrender?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
really interesting. I love the fact that you said it's different than confusion, it's bigger than confusion, but I don't have the word for it. I'm just going to plug Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart for a second. If
Hmm.
nobody do you have this book?
I have not, but I've had
Okay.
several people mention it, so I must buy it.
So I have the book. This is full blown honesty. I have the book. It's probably sitting right here, right behind me on this table. Um, And I've only read like a few chapters of it. And I've also started watching the HBO special that correlates with it. And I really just need to spend like an evening or a rainy day like today, just finishing it. But
Yeah.
basically, Atlas of the Heart is, in my opinion, a thesaurus or an encyclopedia of emotions. What she's trying to do is give word and meaning to emotions we can't formulate, we can't put words to.
Hmm.
So the one example she used was anguish. She's like, anguish is so much different than grief. It's so much bigger than grief. And so she spends a whole lot of time talking about all of these different emotions that we have a hard time putting words to.
Yeah.
When we can put the word and the language to the emotion, it gives us a deeper understanding of what the experience is. It's
Hmm.
brilliant. And
That is
I
very
really
interesting.
have very little tapped into this. And it's designed like a thesaurus. It's not like a book that you would pick up in a storytelling. It really is like, let's talk about these emotions. And she categorizes them into different categories. But I
Interesting.
really felt like when I first opened it, I was like, every single one of my clients needs to have this book because I
Yeah.
give all my clients something called a feeling wheel. So when
Hmm.
I say, how do you feel? They go, I feel really bad about that. I'm like, oh, you have not worked with me long enough. We don't go there. Like, we're not using the term bad. I need to get specific. And I'll pick up this feeling wheel. And then they can now give like 6 words to how they feel. And when they're able to give the word to how they feel, it allows them to explore that sensation and that feeling even more.
Hmm.
And they're starting to realize, well, I'm angry, but I'm actually resentful and I'm actually disappointed and I'm actually, you know, whatever it is that they're experiencing, they can further
Really
qualify
tap
it,
into it. Yeah.
really tap into it. So, plug for Atlas of the Heart for sure. My question for you beyond that is, what did you do from there? Like, where do you go from there? And
Yeah.
how do you forgive yourself also?
Well, so where did I go from there is I just knew I had to go home and be open. I think be open was like the number one thing of just being completely open to seeing things that were coming across my path or that seems like something I should maybe check out or do or whatever it may be. So openness was number one. And from there, number two was explore, right? Explore around those different things that maybe I have never, I had been so much into mindset and like podcast books, kind of all that stuff. So I was familiar with finding information, but I knew I needed to find stuff more in person and more like, connecting one on one with somebody. So I tried all different kinds of stuff. I went to hypnosis. I did other kinds of energy work. I did uh, acupuncture, like I was just trying everything. And around January of that would be 2021, I was kind of setting, it's not a vision board, it's something different, but I was really putting my time and energy into this for the new year. And I remember sitting at my desk and I was just like, I've got to find an in-person event. I've got to check out some stuff like really with groups, just beyond what I've ever experienced. And lo and behold, a lot of stuff started showing up for 2021. So I went to lots of different events. I think I went to over 10 events last year. And so I went all in on just exploring to the deepest level I possibly could, financially too, because it's, of course, not inexpensive to go to events and stuff like that. But, you don't have to do that. That's what I chose to do. That's what
Yeah.
it made sense for me to really explore to a super deep level as much as I possibly could.
All right. So I have 4 questions for you. The first one is one I wanted to ask earlier, and I just couldn't remember it. Going back to that moment when you were in the hotel room and you were so hungover and you were like, what the fuck? What have I done? Who am I? What is going on here? Had you been that hungover before, in the sense that, like, had drinking been a coping mechanism for you on a consistent basis?
That's also a great question because, again, it's like those whispers of the years, right? And I mean, absolutely, back in my 20s, there was that college phase and different stuff like that. So if I had hangovers, absolutely. But this one was different. Like there was something so different and so physically, like the feeling within the body. I also will work on words to explain all that, but it was a feeling of just like done, like enough,
Mm.
right?
Would you
Within the
call that
body.
a visceral feeling? Like, was there disgust involved in that feeling?
Yeah, disgust, shame, anguish, frustration, confusion, like all this big package
Mm.
of emotions.
So here's the next question. When we start on these journeys, and it usually always comes from rock bottom, right?
Hmm.
This is why when I coach people, they're like, that was the worst experience I've ever had. I always question it. I go, was it really?
Hmm.
Because usually, yeah, it was the worst in the sense that it sucked the most. It was the most uncomfortable. It created the most chaos. It created the most discomfort. But are you the same person pre versus post experience? And was that the purpose?
Absolutely.
These worst case scenario situations, they're not our worst enemy, they're our greatest teacher if we allow them to be.
Absolutely. If we allow
Now,
them to be, for sure.
if we allow them to be. So when we end up hitting that rock bottom and we say, okay, something's got to shift, something's
Hmm.
off, something needs to be different. Um, Very often, we're very aware of why we've been ignoring the whispers, why we've been having these maladaptive coping mechanisms. And when I work with people, and I just updated my website to show this as well, when I talk about trauma, I say that there's usually two camps, people that come to me that are very aware of their shit,
Hmm.
very aware that they had X experience in childhood. And I'll preface this by saying it doesn't have to be abuse, but there's been some sort of experience growing up before you were 20 or before you were 18 that you were very, very aware that you have some sort of trauma that you've not been able to process up to this point, and your way of coping with it after not being able to process properly was to put it in a lockbox, wrap it with a heavy chain, drop it to the ocean, cover it with sand, and walk away from it because it's just too painful to deal with.
Hmm.
But yet they're still stuck. And the
Hmm.
other camp is totally unaware, think that
Yeah.
trauma is only abuse related, and that don't understand that any experience that leaves a child feeling insignificant, unimportant, unseen, unheard, invalid, not valid, um, or alone can be processed as trauma for a child. Right. And so they're very unaware, but they're on this mission to seek, why am I so stuck? So
Yeah.
when you started on your journey, could you identify yourself in one of those camps?
I was aware. I mean, I
Okay.
was aware to a certain level. I think
Mm.
that's what's really interesting is like you become more and more aware of the different levels. Like, in my opinion, it's just like this work never ends. This is what we're here to do. And we're really here to open up and discover all parts of ourselves. And so at that time, I had a certain level of awareness of what had impacted me from my childhood or growing up or experiencing this or that. And as I've gone on the journey, there's so much more that I have tapped into that I didn't even know was something holding me back.
Can
So
you
when
share are you comfortable sharing what some of those things might be?
yeah, the interesting part, I'll share this one for sure, which is like the you could call it positive trauma. So it's like actually there's been so much reinforcement of good behavior or
Mm.
of getting really successful or all that, that now you've tied all your value into your success, right?
We call that
So
toxic positivity.
Yeah. So it is something we want to pray. It of course makes sense. My parents praised me for the stuff that they did, but I had no idea that I was so attached to that. And that was really creating, and thankfully it has created a lot of amazing stuff, right? But I didn't realize how much my love and self worth was coming from that. So,
It's that
really,
codependency on other people's accolades and other people's validation to
yeah,
continue on the churn.
absolutely. So, you're just becoming more aware of like all these attachments to your identity you have, all these attachments to the beliefs you have, and it's just going deeper and deeper and deeper into that as you want to. Not everybody has to go ultra deep, right? It's just like whatever level they're at, do they want to go to the next level?
Amazing. So, what are what's the next steps for you? Like, where has this taken you as a realtor who's pivoting into her awareness? What does that mean? What have you created based on that?
Yeah, well, we're still, my husband and I, still in the real estate business, and that's been our primary, focus for the most part. And it has, as I started on this journey, I had no idea that it was eventually going to turn to, I've really got to share this and help people, right? It's like you start doing it so much yourself, and you're like, this is too good. This is too helpful for people going through the stress, burnout, whatever it may be. So I really got excited about, I've got to share this with people. So I've started a second business, which is called Sage. It's soulfully aligned, grow and evolve. And through that, I'm doing various programs of course, coaching, meditation programs I'm going to do, and, you know, uh, all that fun stuff, whatever, whatever comes up to continue to share, but mainly coaching and incorporating energy work and meditation into that.
So, tell me a little bit more about your coaching style and this energy work.
Coaching style is, I call it coaching. Some people might say, what is the other word? Life coaching or something like that.
Sure.
But it's all about growth of you as a whole person, right? It's not just focused on business or family life or whatever. You're taking an overall consensus, a look at their life and where are they really wanting to grow certain parts of that. And then incorporating in energetic work, which is really connecting with those parts of yourself that are just wanting to grow. And like you were saying about traumas and different things like that, it's not necessarily trauma healing, but it's really just being more present with them and the parts of themselves that, often have gotten ignored for so long and so many years.
And what kind of healing techniques do you use? What kind of energy work do you do?
I've done a lot of different, again, events and different coaches and all kinds of webinars. So, pranic healing has always been a part of what's really resonated for me. The SRI, which is like somatic respiratory integration, a lot of breath work, basically.
Mm.
So, it's some of that and other intuitive stuff I've connected with, that breathing, meditation, and really connecting with your body, being present with your body,
So
can
for
change a
people
lot of
that
stuff.
don't are not in the space, like if I'm in the space, which I am, all of that makes a lot of sense to me, right?
Hmm.
But for somebody that's not aware, and this is great education time, what's the benefit of healing? Or no, I'm sorry, not healing, the breath work, the SRI, the breathing, the intentional breathing. What does that do for somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because it is like, yeah, when I first started into this, I was like, wait, what are they talking about? Like, what is
Hmm.
this and all that? And so I'm taking all of this that I've learned and kind of putting it into a practical application, right? It's a practical application that anybody can use. But breathing, conscious breathing, like we breathe so many times a day, right? And we don't even pay attention to it. But really getting conscious and present with our breathing and how that's flowing into our body and where in our body can really help us connect with different energy and different feelings, emotions, beliefs that we want to evolve or let go of or change. So,
And I love this because before we got on to the podcast, you and I were talking a little bit off camera, and, we were talking about how all healers approach healing from their own unique perspective, right? I take what I feel is a very cognitive, emotional approach, right? Yours is more energetic, spiritual approach.
mhm.
And the breath work even is different. Like when I talk to somebody about breath work, I'm using neuroscience when I talk to my clients. I'm like, right now, your amygdala is on fire. And I will pick up, I literally will be in a Zoom call with someone and I'm like, hold please. And I'll pull up my file and I pull up this brain scan, this functional MRI brain scan of a brain of somebody who has not endured trauma, which is pretty hard to find actually. And, a brain that has endured trauma. And I like to show them why they're anxious, because anxiety to me is really an embodied experience. Why that fear, that sense of overwhelm, that sense of stress, to me, those are not feelings, that's embodied emotion, right?
Right.
It's a physical response to a feeling. The
Mhm.
anxiety, the stress, the overwhelm, it's a physical response to fear. The fear of
Mhm.
fucking up, the fear of being seen, the fear of,
Loss.
being called,
Yeah.
all of it, right?
Yep.
It's a sensation. And without things like anxiety, depression, overwhelm, stress, nobody's going to change,
Yeah.
because it's the feeling that stops you in the track. It's the emotion, the embodied emotion that stops you in your track. It's the physical visceralness of that.
Mhm.
So when I do breath work with people, I'm specifically doing it to calm that vagus nerve, to calm that nervous system so they can think. Because when
Mhm.
that piece is calm and the alarm is not ringing in the amygdala, then their prefrontal cortex can actually function and they don't have this paralysis analysis and they can make a decision. Because so many of my clients just are so overwhelmed, they can't make a decision.
Yes.
So I take it from more of let's talk about what's coming out of your body. And
Mhm.
here are some things. And even above and beyond breath work, I do a lot of tapping with my clients because, again, it's this intentionalness. It's getting present in your body. It's talking out what's going on in your system and then giving it something new to work with as you're tapping on these different acupressure points.
Yes. That's
Right.
great.
So everybody comes to it from a different point of view.
Yeah.
You're like, let me help you release the emotion through breath work. And I'm like, let me quiet your amygdala through the breath work. We all are trying to get to the same place, which is peace,
Yeah.
but we're approaching
Absolutely.
it from these different angles. And I just think it's brilliant and I love it. And I think it's important for people who listen to understand it all comes back to the same place, which is peace. But every single practitioner is going to take a different approach and you're going to find the one that has your vibe. And that's what I love about
Absolutely.
doing this.
I 100% agree because it's like there's so many different ways of going about it or things that'll resonate with different people. And, part of just touching on what you said earlier about, the breakdowns can lead to such amazing breakthroughs. And that's such a big part of it is really valuing these feelings that we don't want to feel,
Yeah.
right? And avoiding them. And the more we avoid them, it's actually the more they're there. So
Listen,
it's like, yeah.
I'm very Buddhist by nature. I've got Buddhas all over my home. There's one sitting right next to me here. I believe very strongly in the Buddhist philosophy of life, right?
Hmm.
And in the Buddhist philosophy of life, instead of having, say, heaven, you have nirvana. And in order to get to nirvana, you need to be enlightened. And in
Hmm.
order to be enlightened, you have to have learned life's lessons.
Yeah.
And in Buddhism, you believe in multiple lives, right? So this could be 1,000 lives worth of lessons. And every single life you live is giving you more opportunities. And it's always been my experience that for myself in particular, in this lifetime, I have experienced so much shit at such rapid fire pace in so many different categories or silos throughout my short 50 years. I always say to my husband, these lessons must have been handed to me in so many different ways in so many other different lifetimes that I did not catch them. And now it's like getting hit over the head with the 2x4, like it's your time. You need to catch this lesson. And so too often people circumvent and they distract from and they avoid the pain because who wants to feel it? But if you do
Right.
not allow yourself to go through, you cannot gain the lesson and the challenge. I personally believe life is a series of experiences that are divinely designed for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And when you purposefully and intentionally avoid those experiences because they're uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
you're not in flow and alignment with what the universe has in plan for you. And when you're not in flow and alignment and you're fighting and you're ignoring anxiety, stress, overwhelm, and each one of those things, when not dealt with, will lead to depression.
Yeah. That's very well said. And it is true. And it's like at the moment you're making the choice that you want to do something different, right? Because it's like we didn't really learn this growing up. We didn't really learn how to harness our emotions or our energy or really connect with it. So it's like, oh, we have a choice. We can do this differently and approach things differently, life differently, all that stuff. And um, truly have more peace more often, right?
And I think that that's the ultimate. That's really what everybody wants at the end of the day, which is a great segue because you're offering a piece of peace, if you will, this weekend with
A
your
piece of peace.
your create your vision, manifest your dreams workshop. So tell us
Mhm.
a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's going to be this Sunday night and Monday night. So Sunday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on Sunday and Monday night. So it's the first time I'm offering it out for free. These are, a collection of stuff that I've used over the past several years to really hone in on what do I want to do, why do I want to do it, and really connect with it on a deeper level. I say a more soulful level of like, is this really aligned with what my soul is calling me to do? So I'm going to
Mm.
offer that for free Sunday night and Monday night. And
And
that's
how
going
can
to
people
be,
sign up for that, Lisa?
yeah, probably the easiest thing to do would be to find me on social media at Lisa Vanhara or Live the Sage Life, either one. And there is a private Facebook group that they would need to join, but they can just message me to access that.
Okay.
And
So that's on Facebook too, right?
yes,
Great.
Facebook or Instagram, either one.
And then tell me also about this 3-2-1 22-day meditation challenge that you're offering.
So the 3-2-1 program we just finished up I think that was about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that will run again. However, on June 1st, we're starting the 22-day meditation challenge, which this is going to be the third time it's being run. And people that have been in before just absolutely love it. But it's 22 days consistently every day of 15 minutes of like a short lesson on mindset, connecting, whatever it may be. And then it's a quick 15-minute meditation. So anybody can add that into their day. Again, it's practical, but it's also useful, growth oriented, and just how to better connect and move into your day in a more state of flow.
And so, how can people sign up for the 22-day challenge?
I would say the same thing. There's a private Facebook group for that one as well. So just find me on social media, send me a private message, and just let me know that you're interested.
That's awesome. And your Facebook is Live the Sage Life, correct?
Yes, Live the Sage Life. And yeah, that's the easiest way to find me.
Perfect. So I always love to ask, and you're already giving us a number of really either low cost or no cost options here for people to get started on their own healing journey. But I always love to share the fact that, on my own self healing journey, when I really had my last break down, which led to my biggest breakthrough, I did not have the financial resources to access the help that I wanted. I wanted to
Mhm.
work with certain people and I didn't have the funds at the time to do that. And so I had to really lean back to either no cost or low cost alternatives, like either getting a book from a library or buying a book, listening to podcasts, listening to Facebook lives, or even catching YouTube videos. And my go-to person at the time was Brene Brown. And then it
Mhm.
quickly led into Brene Brown and Don Miguel Ruiz. And these are two thought leaders, Pema Chandran, that really allowed me to shift. You talked about going on all of these events last year, but you also admitted it's not easily accessible for everyone. So, do you have a particular author or a thought leader or someone that you really, were drawn to during your journey that somebody could maybe catch on a podcast or a YouTube or a book?
Absolutely. I would say like the first book that just so resonated with me, which Oprah mentioned on her podcast, Super Soul Sunday, Gary Zukav.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Zukav's Seed of the Soul. That was like one of the first spiritual books that I read, and just I didn't understand it all at the time, but I read it and I knew that there was something there that just was so meaningful. And Oprah was one of them. The Super Soul Sunday podcast, absolutely great because she has so many interviews on there with amazing people. But what else? In the very beginning, I listened to tons of podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was such a great resource. And it's not spiritual, but one that I did listen to a lot was The One Thing. It's the One
Mm,
Thing podcast. And I listened to that for probably at least a year or two. And that always had great lessons in there.
I love that.
Um, Otherwise, Radical Forgiveness, the book I gave you, one of
Yeah.
my most favorite books of all time, too. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for people to listen to your journey. I'm so excited it aligned up with your upcoming webinar. Again, just to remind people, it's this Sunday and Monday. So that is what, the 22nd and the 23rd? Is that
yes,
correct?
yes,
Eastern Standard Time, 1 hour each night, 8 o'clock?
8 p.m.,
8
correct.
p.m. And you can find that right on her Facebook at Live the Sage Life. If you were catching this on the replay, please drop your questions or comments into the comment box on Facebook or on YouTube where you can find this recording. We would love to hear from you. We would love to answer any kind of questions or comments you have. And as I mentioned earlier in the recording, this will be available on any podcast platform where you catch your podcast, and you don't have to catch just This Meaningful Life. You can catch my other series from last year known as Strong as a Mother. All you have to do is search up Flip That Shit in any podcast platform and you will come up with both series. So thank you so much for joining us, guys, and we hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you, Stacey.
You're welcome.